Hello, I'm Diego, and as many of you know, I'm very interested in what my background is, and as you can tell from my art, I really like to express my cultural background in a creative way. So all of my life I've always been interested in who I am. I have always considered myself 100% Mexican. I was born in Mexico. I came to the United States when I was 4 years old, and my whole life, that's how I've seen myself, as a Mexican, as a proud Mexican. Most of my life, you know, people when they meet me, they kind of get confused. They think that like I'm mixed, and I always explain I'm Mexican, but it turns out they're kind of right. I even remember one time, or I always get, you know, people always think that I have some other background. They think that I'm Asian, or one time my landlord, when I moved into San Francisco, his first question to me was, "So what part of the Philippines is your family from?" And then I was like, "I'm Mexican." It was so awkward. It was awkward. Anyways, now when I was in high school, they didn't really go into very much detail into the complexities or the intricacies of the history of Mexico, because most of it was focused on US history. But I do feel that they left out a very big part of history of the Americas in my high school class, which was the conquest of Mexico, or a big conquest of the Native American tribes. So when I left high school, I really just consider myself Mexican. I went into college and I wanted to dig in deeper. So what I did was I took a lot of ethnic studies courses. I took anthropology courses, sociology courses, and history courses to kind of more find out about my background. And through those courses, I found out a lot of details about the Spanish conquest of Mexico, more specific details about the cultures that existed in Mesoamerica, the Mayan cultures, the Totonacs, the Aztecs, the Purépechas. I learned a lot of more details about my background, and details that I really wanted to know, and they helped me formulate my identity. At the same time, I also had joined an Aztec dance group and a ballet folklorico, which is Mexican folkloric dancing group. So during that time, I kind of formulated my identity and more solidified myself to figure out, or to realize that I was probably a mestizo. So at the end of college, I considered myself mestizo. I considered myself about maybe 50% Spanish and 50% Native American. All right, so I came out to be 48% Native American, 35% European, 11% African, 4% West Asian, and 2% Asian. So if we break down the results, unfortunately the Ancestry DNA doesn't really break down Native American into very specific tribes or anything like that, which is kind of not cool. But I presume that probably that 48% comes from the Michoacan region, which is probably the Purépecha people. That's what I think, but the truth is I don't know. And so unfortunately I can't say specifically what areas, but the European and other regions are broken down more specifically. So the European 35%, 14% of that it says it's from the Iberian Peninsula. The Iberian Peninsula is basically Spain. So okay, the 14%, I mean, from Spain, I expect that. 8% or 7% of it actually comes from Italy and Greece. Didn't expect that. A couple percentage of it comes from Ireland, and Yeah, so it's, even though it says 35%, it's kind of a mixture of a lot of the Southern European and some Irish in there. And then the 11% that it mentions in from Africa, it points to the region of southeastern Bantu, which is like South Africa, Angola, and countries in the southern part of Africa. So I think that these DNA results are pretty surprising to me, and I think they're actually pretty important in kind of realizing that we are probably more complex than we think, and maybe the information that we've heard about ourselves from different sources are not necessarily accurate, and they're a little bit more complicated. History is a lot more complicated than we've probably learned, and I think that this is a good way to kind of investigate and dig deeper and find out really who you are. We probably are more complex than we think we are, because many people base their identity on what they've heard from their family members, from their history classes, from books, etc., about who they are. But not until you do a DNA test results do you really know what your background is, because maybe you have certain DNA, but the genetic traits don't necessarily manifest themselves into what you look like, so you don't necessarily know what your background is. So I think that receiving these results kind of illuminated me a little bit more and made my identity just a little bit more complex. Yeah, so I feel like this is was very helpful for me, but it's not gonna necessarily change my identity too much, because for the last couple of years I have considered myself Native American. I would say the last 5 or 6 years, based on the ethnic studies courses. So my art, which I've created in the last couple of years, is probably not going to change, because the 48% probably reflects my identity the most, because it's the biggest portion. But now I also know I have African in me, and I have European, and it's kind of good to know and pin it down and be like specific about where I come from and who I am. So I hope that you all enjoyed this video, and that maybe you'll be inspired to figure out, investigate who you are. Don't believe what people tell you. Instead, believe in evidence and believe what the hard science says.